This is a CBS News special report. Dan Rather reporting from CBS News World Headquarters in New York. Former First Lady Jackie Kennedy Onassis has died of cancer at her apartment in New York City. She was 64 years old. America began its love affair with Jackie Kennedy when the 31-year-old Mrs. Kennedy watched her husband become the nation's 35th president. As First Lady, she enjoyed enormous popularity both at home and abroad for her elegance and style. For many Americans, her finest hour came in the aftermath of her husband's assassination. Her dignity, poise, strength, and grace during that horrifying time in many ways carried an entire nation through the tragedy. After that, Jackie Kennedy retreated from the public eye. In 1968, she married Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. Onassis died in 1975. In her later years, as a book editor for Doubleday and as a grandmother, Jackie Kennedy Onassis maintained an intensely private life. There will be more about the death of Jackie Kennedy Onassis later on this CBS station. Dan Rather, CBS News, New York.
This has been a CBS News special report.
Today was remembering former First Lady Jackie Kennedy Onassis for her style and dignity. Former First Lady's son, John Kennedy Jr., says his mother was surrounded by love when she died last night. She died of cancer at about 7:15 last night at her home in New York. She was 64. Kennedy says the family is extremely grateful for the outpouring of support from family, friends, and even from strangers. Bouquets of spring flowers have piled up outside Onassis' building, while people who never knew her have gathered to pay their respects. Speaking in California today, President Clinton called it a very sad day for his family. He says one of the best days he ever spent was last summer on a cruise with Onassis off the coast of Massachusetts. In the 30 years after her husband's assassination, Jackie Kennedy Onassis remained one of the most popular first ladies in American history. Bruce Morton takes a look at how Jackie Kennedy redefined the role of First Lady.
They all did it differently. Eleanor Roosevelt was a political force.
She operated to Franklin Roosevelt's left, fought for blacks, many other underprivileged groups in this society. Jackie Kennedy operated in the other half of the First Lady's role, and that is the ceremonial side.
But ceremony mattered. This was a time when much of the world talked of ugly Americans, cultural louts. It was harder to do that when Pablo Casals played his cello at the White House.
Ustedes conocen el deseo profundo de mi marido.
Or when Mrs. Kennedy charmed the places she visited in their language.
And the heads of state were enchanted by her, and she spoke their languages, and she would always speak in the language of the country. She really did a fantastic job for us internationally.
Other First Ladies, Mamie Eisenhower, Pat Nixon, led more private lives, though Jackie Kennedy Onassis always sought privacy too. Nancy Reagan, like Mrs. Kennedy, worked to restore the White House. Each of them had her own view of the job.
I think that's very true. I think Americans had long felt like they were the poor relations, culturally speaking, of the Europeans. And I think that was what informed her restoration of the White House, that she wanted to restore it to its period of pristine glory.
But in the end, Mrs. Kennedy did something no other First Lady has ever done or ever had to do. She taught us how to mourn.
A woman who gave the country its stature in 4 days in 1963 at a time in which America's image was very much in danger around the world.
Television helped. The pictures bound us together. But it was her ceremony, her ritual, which let us grieve together. And at the end, when the services were finished, she went on television to thank us for mourning with her.
I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the hundreds of thousands of messages. Whenever I can bear to, I read them.
Instead of a country full of gunmen, the world saw a country sharing grief. That was style, not politics, but sometimes style matters more than politics. Bruce Morton, Washington.
Sad times.
Channel 8, people you can count on.
She was the chicest lady around. She carried off a grace and elegance that very few American women could match at that time.
The world sheds a tear for one of its great and magical ladies. Hollywood looks back and remembers Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. This is Entertainment Tonight for Friday, May 20th, 1994.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Tesh.
And I'm Mary Hart. All of the good words apply to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Style, grace, courage, beauty, poise. Beyond all of that, she had a natural stardom which even Hollywood could not have invented. And she wore it well right to the end yesterday at the age of 64. Whenever she stepped out, as here with son John at the wedding of niece Maria Shriver and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jackie was the undisputed star attraction. It was something she was long accustomed to being. She came from wealth, studied at Vassar and Paris' Sorbonne, and worked as the inquiring photographer for a Washington, D.C. newspaper. Her 1953 marriage to future President John F. Kennedy seemed to unfold like a storybook.
I met him at the home of friends of ours who'd been shamelessly matchmaking for a year. So I'm very grateful to them.
In 1962, Jackie opened up the White House to TV cameras, a momentous event that let the public glimpse their favorite Washington hostess, showing off her home and demonstrating her good taste.
This is obviously the room from which much of your work on it is directed.
Yes, it's attic and cellar all in one. Since our work started, we received hundreds of letters every day. This is where we evaluate all the finds, see if we want to keep them, if they fit into our budget.
The assassination of President Kennedy in '63 stunned the nation, and Jackie was left to raise young Caroline and John. But in 1968, she stunned many people herself with her marriage to Greek shipping magnate Jackie Onassis, and the reports of huge financial windfalls now coming her way. JFK's press secretary, Pierre Salinger, is a longtime family friend.
I think that the important point is that Jackie, who has been much maligned by the media, did an absolutely incredible job of bringing up her two children after the death of John Kennedy. I mean, she concentrated on that as the most important thing in her life. And people have criticized her for marrying Aristotle Onassis and for various other things, but at no point in her life did she have any other focus except bringing up her kids. And in fact, she made an agreement with Aristotle Onassis that they would live most of the time in New York and not in Greece, because she wanted to be close to her children and be able to take care of them and bring them up.
In later years, Jackie surprised people again by becoming a book editor at two top publishing houses, and more recently by her long-term relationship with a married man, Maurice Templesman. Through it all, Jackie lived life to the fullest and won the admiration of many worldwide. In keeping with her wishes, funeral services will be private for family and close friends only.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was one of the world's most famous women, but at the same time she was also among the most private. She hadn't granted a personal interview in more than 30 years. But in spite of all that, Hollywood and the public could not get enough. There are more than 40 books and over 25 films on the big screen and TV. Hollywood has always had a love affair with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Her glamorous yet very tragic life was played out on the screen time after time.
I have done everything I could to help you get elected.
Actresses from Jacqueline Smith to Jacqueline Bisset took a stab at portraying her.
What protection against the world?
To come and go, and come back to.
Actress Roma Downey told us getting a chance to play the former First Lady was an honor.
I have tremendous respect for her. I think she's an amazing woman. She's led an amazing life.
When she first came to the White House, America couldn't help but notice her sense of style.